In 2018, a 14-year-old girl from the United Kingdom walked onto the America's Got Talent stage, looking exactly like the nervous teenager she was. Courtney Hadwin seemed shy, uncertain, and almost overwhelmed by the attention around her. Then the music started, and within seconds, the entire atmosphere changed. Her performance of Hard to Handle was explosive, raw, and completely unexpected. The quiet teenager who had barely seemed comfortable standing in front of the judges suddenly sounded like a seasoned rock singer. Her raspy voice, powerful delivery, and natural stage presence caught everyone off guard. Howie Mandel was so impressed that he hit the golden buzzer, sending Courtney directly into the next stage of the competition. The reaction was immediate. Viewers around the world began talking about the young singer, who seemed to have stepped out of another era. Mandel compared her vocal style to Janis Joplin, a comparison that carried enormous weight for a teenager who clearly admired classic rock, soul, and blues. Courtney wasn't trying to sound like a modern pop star. She wasn't following a trend. She simply sounded like herself, and that authenticity was exactly what made the performance so memorable. The AGT dream didn't end with a win. By the time the America's Got Talent finale arrived, expectations were enormous. Courtney had become one of the season's most talked about performers, and many viewers believed she could take the entire competition. She ultimately finished in the top 10, while magician Shin Lim won the season. For some fans, that result felt disappointing because they had already imagined Courtney becoming the show's next major breakout star. Looking back, however, not winning may have given her something surprisingly valuable: time. A victory could have placed even greater pressure on her to immediately become a commercial success. Instead, Courtney had the opportunity to figure out what kind of musician she actually wanted to be. Her television appearance had introduced her to millions of people, but television fame and a lasting music career are two very different things. The industry can move incredibly fast after a reality show breakthrough. Audiences expect new music, interviews, performances, and constant appearances almost immediately. Courtney's story took a different direction. Rather than allowing one television performance to define her entire career, she began working out what she wanted her future to sound like: the pressure of a record deal. After her appearance on the show, Courtney attracted major industry attention and eventually signed with Arista Records. On paper, it looked like the perfect next step. She had the exposure, the talent, the backing of a major label, and an audience that was eager to hear what she would do next. Many young artists would have been encouraged to move as quickly as possible, releasing a debut single while their television fame was still fresh. Courtney's development didn't happen that way. She relocated to the United States and continued working on her music. But the highly anticipated debut did not arrive immediately. To fans watching from the outside, the silence was confusing. Where was the album? Where was the big single? Why wasn't she appearing everywhere? The answer was less dramatic than people might imagine. Courtney was growing up. She was also trying to understand how to turn an extraordinary voice into a sustainable artistic identity. There is a huge difference between impressing an audience with a powerful cover and building a career around original material. A reality show performance can prove that someone has incredible talent, but original music has to prove that the artist has something to say. Learning to become an artist. That period of waiting became an important part of Courtney's development. Instead of rushing out a collection of songs simply because the public expected them, she had time to experiment. Her musical influences remained rooted in artists such as Janis Joplin, Etta James, James Brown, and Led Zeppelin. These were musicians whose identities were built around personality, emotion, and performance rather than fitting neatly into a predetermined category. Courtney had never sounded like a conventional pop singer, and forcing her into that world could have taken away the very qualities that made people notice her in the first place. She eventually released an EP featuring stripped-back interpretations of familiar songs, including Sign of the Times and Old Town Road. The project wasn't simply an attempt to recreate her AGT moment. It showed listeners another side of her voice and gave her room to experiment with arrangements and emotion. At the same time, she continued performing in smaller venues and festivals, Those shows may not have attracted the enormous audiences associated with television, but they gave Courtney something that television could never provide: real experience in front of live audiences. Every performance helped her understand her strengths, build confidence, and discover what kind of performer she wanted to become. Why the silence actually mattered. For an artist coming from a major television platform, stepping away from constant attention can seem like a risky decision. Fame is often treated as something that has to be maintained every single day. Social media moves quickly, audiences move on, and another viral performer is always waiting around the corner. Courtney's journey suggests that disappearing from the spotlight isn't always the same thing as disappearing from music. Behind the scenes, she was developing her sound and gaining experience. She also had to face one of the hardest challenges for any young performer: growing beyond the thing that made people notice you in the first place. At 14, the shock of seeing such a young singer deliver a huge rock performance was part of the fascination. As Courtney got older, that novelty naturally faded. The question became much more serious. Could she create songs that people wanted to hear when she was no longer the teenage sensation from America's Got Talent? Could she build an identity that existed independently of that one unforgettable audition? Those questions required patience, and Courtney appeared willing to take that time rather than constantly chase attention, finding her own direction. Eventually, Courtney's relationship with the traditional music industry changed, and she parted ways with Arista Records. Leaving a major label can look like a setback from the outside, but it can also create an entirely different kind of freedom. Without a major company deciding how her music should be positioned, Courtney had greater control over her creative direction. That freedom also came with responsibility. She had to think about recording, releasing music, connecting with listeners, and continuing to perform without relying entirely on a traditional industry machine. Her approach to social media also reflected that difference. Rather than turning herself into a full-time personality, she continued sharing music, performances, studio moments, and glimpses of the creative process. It felt less like an attempt to manufacture constant attention, and more like an invitation for people to follow her development. That distinction matters because Courtney's audience had already connected with her for something specific: her voice and her personality as a musician. They didn't necessarily need her to become a celebrity. They wanted to hear what she could do next. A more mature Courtney. By the time Courtney reached her 20s, the challenge had changed completely. She was no longer the nervous 14-year-old who shocked a television audience. She was an adult musician responsible for proving that her talent could survive beyond one viral moment. Her later releases showed a stronger sense of identity, with rock, blues, pop, and punk influences appearing throughout her work. One notable example was Spellbound, released in 2025. The song carried the energy that listeners had associated with Courtney from the beginning, but there was also a greater sense of maturity behind it. Her voice had naturally developed with age, and the emotional delivery felt less like a young singer trying to prove something, and more like an artist who understood her own strengths. The song also reflected Courtney's willingness to let ideas develop naturally in the studio, rather than treating every release as a carefully engineered attempt to recreate her past success. That evolution is important. The goal was never to become the same 14-year-old audiences remembered. The goal was to become a better version of the musician that teenager had introduced to the world. The story before America's Got Talent. What makes Courtney's journey even more interesting is that America's Got Talent was never truly the beginning. Years before the golden buzzer, she was already performing and developing her craft. In 2015, she appeared in the Teen Star singing competition in Newcastle. Later that year, a school performance of Say Something began attracting attention online. In 2016, she won Hartlepool's Performer of the Year award, and by 2017 she was opening for Sister Sledge at the Southside Festival, performing for a huge crowd. She also took part in charity performances and continued finding opportunities to sing wherever she could. In other words, Courtney wasn't an unknown teenager who suddenly discovered music when she stepped onto the AGT stage. She had already spent years performing. The television show simply gave that work a much larger audience. That distinction changes the way her story can be understood. Her career wasn't created by one viral performance. That performance accelerated a journey that had already been underway for years. More than a viral moment, Courtney Hadwin's story is ultimately about something bigger than a golden buzzer or a reality show result. Her most important decision may have been refusing to let one extraordinary night become the entire definition of her career. The easy story would have been for her to release a quick pop single, chase every available opportunity, and try to remain permanently connected to the fame created by America's Got Talent. Instead, she took a slower route. She grew up, experimented, performed, wrote, recorded, changed direction, and continued figuring out who she wanted to be as an artist. That process isn't always exciting from the outside. There are long periods when nothing appears to be happening, and fans can easily mistake patience for inactivity. But creative growth rarely follows a perfect schedule. Courtney's journey shows that sometimes the most important part of a career happens when nobody is watching. The girl who once shocked millions with a single performance now has the opportunity to build something that lasts far beyond that moment. Whether her future brings a full album, more singles, bigger stages, or simply years of meaningful music, the foundation is already there. She doesn't need to recreate the Courtney Hadwin who walked onto that AGT stage in 2018. She has spent years becoming someone new, and that may ultimately be the most important part of her story.